All right, folks, I am here to bring you another in the series. This is the fourth in the series of response videos to some of the things that Joel Saint had to say in a couple sermons. One really the larger of the sermons where we're disassembling it piece by piece and demonstrating error after error on his part, a lack of understanding of Scripture, and improper, often eisegetical understanding, pumping his own ideas in, pulling man-made traditions out, really bad stuff. But I have a special surprise for you this morning. In addition to a couple little things that we will have in the video, I have been wanting to redo our intro video. And so we have a special surprise for you. The intro video here, we're rolling this out just for Mr. Saint so that he can have a good look at what a good family looks like. And so we've got that for you this morning as well. So here we go. Roll the intro. All right, it was fun collecting some of the video for that intro. I'm excited about the fact that that we can simply live and walk and be what the Father called us to be, and I'm not worried about it. Really don't care. And it's absolutely exciting to be able to display to the world what one of the forms of marriage that the Father absolutely agrees with, has no problem with, refers to himself even as having two wives. So, good stuff. Tell you, if you want a whole lot more, be able to interact with a lot of other families who believe and understand this, and or in some cases even walk it out. We've got multiple polygynous families in our Patreon group. I recommend come join us over on Patreon. The lowest setting there, $5 a month, gets you into our private Telegram groups. You do need to get on Telegram. It's a free app. You do need to get on Telegram and then reach out to me. My contact information for Telegram is down in every show notes. It's in all of the show notes. If you'll reach out to me, then I can get you in there. The pinned video at the top of our Patreon group has instructions on how to do that as well. Seems like a lot of people find their way in very easily, and then others are a little bit challenged by the technology. Not a big deal. We're happy to help you work that out. You just got to get in touch with us so that we can help that out. Okay. So we would love to have you with us. If you care to join at one of the other levels, you can get a T-shirt comes with it, signed, autographed, not just autographed, but a signed with a blessing, handwritten blessing in the front of my book, Authority, Headship, and Family Structure According to Moses. And it actually digs through all of Scripture, not just the Torah, but it demonstrates that all of Scripture is consistent and all of it is directly connected to the Torah. So, even if you don't join us on Patreon, go get a copy of that at Amazon. There's a link for it in the show notes as well. Would love to have you. That's something that will be of great value as you study authority, headship, and family structure. Also covers polygyny and marriage and all of those pieces. But it's more important that you as men and women walk according to the ways of the Most High and walk according to his plan and purpose, which is patriarchy. It is not the matriarchy or the feminism that we see in church pulpits, that we see in churches, that we see in the culture at large. All of those are roundly rejected by Scripture, and misinterpretation simply open the door for Asherah worship. Go back and see the video I just did interviewing Jacob Folk, the author of Exposing the Spirit of Asherah, and how he really found these things and puts pieces of Scripture together demonstrating Asherah in the church and demonstrating how to kick her out. So, good stuff right there. Okay, so we have been doing this review of a major review of a Joel Saint sermon that was so messed up that we've had to break it up into 4 pieces, as well as he had a recap of his first sermon. And thus far, here we are. We are 4 sermons in, and he has yet to give us a verse where God calls polygyny a sin. He tries to explain away a whole bunch of stuff. He twists and pulls some pieces from lots of different places. But he has yet to give us a place where God calls it a sin. And we've demonstrated multiple times where God calls himself the husband of two wives. We've demonstrated where Yeshua, Jesus, refers to himself as having multiple wives in both Matthew chapter 22 and in Matthew 25. We've demonstrated that there's misinterpretation and or mistranslation of any of the verses that he has pointed to, and he's only pointed to 4, really. He went to Leviticus 18:18 early, and he just completely ignored the whole phrase as a rival. There's a reason why you don't bring a sister in as a rival to a sister. And he says, oh, words have meaning. And then he completely ignores the fact that there are words in that sentence that give very specific, very narrow caveat as to why. Then he twists up and tries to explain away 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 8, and does so with 1 Corinthians 7, verse 2 and 4. And then the last video that we did was on Timothy, and 1 Timothy 3, 2, and Titus 2, or I think something like that. It's the Mia passages, and he didn't even bother going to the fact that Mia can potentially mean other things besides one. So anyway, there we go. So we're at this place now. Let's flip over here to the video, and we are going to continue where we have left off. I have parsed this thing into multiple pieces so that we can take it one section at a time. So, without further ado, we'll head into part 3 with Joel Saint.
Thirdly, the original purpose. We talked about this briefly last week, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. We talked about that last week, they. But Christ elaborates on this. He actually says the two.
So what Messiah Yeshua does, he quotes or he cites from the Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Hebrew Torah, and the Septuagint indeed says the two shall become one flesh. But it's interesting that he does that in a discussion with the Pharisees about divorce. And the point that Yeshua is making about the two becoming one flesh is that the two cannot be dissolved or separated, or should not be dissolved or separated, except in very rare circumstances, which would include porneia, or what we would understand to be fornication or some sexual sin of that sort. Of course, he's not going to tell you that Yeshua is not discussing marriage. He's discussing divorce or sending away, and the different misunderstandings that the Prushim, the Pharisees, had at that time. So, yes, he does. He talks about that, but his specific reference is that the two become one, and they should not be torn apart. He's not saying only two. What he's saying is that each marriage, a man and a woman, become one flesh. And that's the consistent message all the way through Scripture. And I absolutely agree with that. A man and a woman are one flesh. The problem that Mr. Saint and all of Christendom has trouble with is understanding that nowhere does the Most High limit a man to only one flesh union. Nowhere does the Most High say a man can only have one marriage. And that's the problem he can't wrap his mind around. He doesn't want to go there because, of course, that would immediately expose the false doctrine of monogamy only. But we will continue.
So we have further information from Christ here.
No, we don't.
Christ in Matthew 19. And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh.
Again, please actually read that in context. Go to the beginning of the chapter, look in verse 1 and say, the Pharisees came to Yeshua asking him, or testing him, I think it says, testing him, asking him, can a man send away? It's not divorce, it's probably mistranslated in your translation as well. Can a man send away a woman for any reason? And Yeshua is saying, no, you can't. The two are one flesh. Don't do it. Okay, but he doesn't really want that piece of the argument, because obviously that would demonstrate that the argument's not about how many make whether or not polygyny is legitimate, but whether or not but the argument is actually about whether or not a man and a woman can be separated or dissolved as a marriage.
The two. That wasn't said in Genesis. It says
Right.
They shall be one. Now it's the two.
And again, Yeshua is not writing new or saying something new. He's actually quoting a translation that existed 100 years before he was born. So he's not coming up with something new. He's just citing the Septuagint that existed more than 100 years before he was born.
And also, here in Mark, for this reason shall a man leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife.
Same subject, exactly the same subject. Mark is a retelling of Matthew 19, or Matthew 19 is a retelling of Mark, depending on, I think commonly the understanding is Mark was the first gospel written, and Matthew and Luke are built from it, and then John is entirely separate. Okay?
Mark
Same
10:7, and then Ephesians 5:31, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two.
The two. Well, again, the point. I agree. A marriage is a man and a woman. That's not a problem. It just never says that a man can't have more than one marriage. Jacob had 4 marriages: Leah and Rachel and Bilhah and Zilpah. And God gave him all 4 of them.
Again, shall be one flesh. We have Paul confirming what Christ said, Christ giving us further information, Christ interpreting what the Old Testament had to say
Concerning
about this,
divorce.
what Moses had to say. The original purpose. How perfect was the Garden of Eden? Apparently not too perfect. Or was one man and one wife God's idea? One man.
So this is the ideal, God's ideal argument. And elsewhere he has said very clearly that prescription is, or description is not prescription. But now he's going to use description and claim that it is prescription. And it's not. No command there that that a marriage is supposed to be a man and a woman. It just says that the two become one flesh, and no limitation on how many a man can have. Otherwise, if he wants to take that passage and everything that's going on there, and we all know this, my audience has heard this 1,000 times, if we want to take that passage, then we also have to pursue everything else that goes in that passage and understand all of it together as a command, which means got to be naked, got to be vegan, God's got to bring you your woman, she has to be made from a rib, so on and so forth. So the whole idea that this passage right here demonstrates or is somehow a command, is it a violation of the command to be celibate and single? Is it a violation of the command to have more than one? Here's the problem. He needs to be consistent with his hermeneutic, and he's not. And Christendom is terribly inconsistent on this verse because they want a piece of it. They don't want the whole thing.
Man, one woman. Was that his plan? As we said before, he certainly could have created as many. He could have had a half a dozen or a dozen wives for Adam.
Very true.
If polygamy is better, and they don't actually argue this as such.
Okay, so 2 very important points right here. Number 1, you got to have 1 before you can have 2, or 3, or 4, or whatever. Having experience and actually learning and growing, it's, one marriage is kind of like the training wheels. You shouldn't have, God shouldn't, he wisely did not give Adam more than he could handle initially until he learned how to ride with the training wheels, right? Or let's say a tricycle, and then you move up to a bicycle, and then you move up to a unicycle, or whatever. The point being that that if the Most High acts the way he normally does, is he entrusts you with a little, and then when you can handle a little, he entrusts you with a lot. He entrusts you with more. Adam obviously didn't handle his very well, because with monogamy, he took all of mankind into sin and death. A really stellar example of a successful monogamous union. So, yeah, that's really good. But the other point that he makes right here is that polygynists, myself included, never argue that polygamy is an ideal or is better than. We just argue that Scripture says it's an option. It is an option. And for Jacob, it was better than monogamy. It was God's plan. It was God's will for Jacob to have 4 wives. It was God's will for Jacob to have 4, and we can see that God orchestrated the events and pulled the levers on the women's wombs in order to drive it to the point where he had 4 wives. And they give him credit. Of course, Joel scoffs at that because he laughs at anything in the word of the Most High that doesn't agree with his perspective. He places God in judgment there.
But if it's a blessing, as they do argue,
it is a blessing.
And Adam certainly had all he needed, and that's
He who finds a wife finds a good thing, right? Children are an inheritance and a blessing from the Lord. Those things are a blessing. Scripture clearly says that, and it nowhere ever limits it. Therefore, having more than one woman is a blessing, period.
Key word. So let's get off of perfection for a minute. Did Adam have all he needed in the garden? Did he? Did he not?
He had all he needed at that point. He had all he needed at that point because we understand that the Father he's unfolding things. We can't make an assumption that he had everything that he needed and that was going to be all. We don't know that. That's an assumption that Joel is making.
Did he have all he needed?
At that point, yes.
All he needed. A polygamist would have to say, well, no, not really. And, one of my, and I got to get into this a little bit more in another context. One person said, well, who cares if God gave Adam only one wife? Who cares? I'm thinking, that's the way you got to think if you're going to believe in polygamy. That's the way you have to think right there. Congratulations, you're thinking consistently.
So I'm not sure I would quite say it, who cares, but what I would say is what we have a narrative. We don't have a command. And in the narrative, we see an establishment of what we would call marriage, or as a good friend of mine calls this thing we call marriage, right? Because marriage is technically not a Bible word. What we have is a man takes a wife, or a woman is given to him. And here's the problem with this. Joel's the one that's not thinking consistently, right? Because what he's trying to do is to force that to become the standard, right? Monogamy only as the standard. But then he has to deal with all of these verses where God regulates or even gives women too. He regulates the means by which a man can have multiple wives. And then God even gives too. He tells David, I would have given you more. Right? That's exactly what he says. We see very clearly that Joash did what was right in the sight of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada the priest, and Jehoiada gave him 2 wives, and they bore him sons and daughters. Very, very clear. There's not a single place, and Joel has not produced it, can't produce it, will never produce it. There's not a single place that God condemns polygyny. It's not there. So if somebody says that Adam only had one, who cares? That's actually a legitimate response. Not the way I would say it, but that's a legitimate response on the grounds that, okay, so God only gave Adam one. So what? We have commands. We have regulations that clearly demonstrate, and God never, ever, ever regulates sin. So it clearly demonstrates that if you're going to have more than one, these are the boundaries for it, which by definition means if you stay inside the boundaries, it's not sin. So these are things that Joel just cannot.
God gave Adam only one wife. What's that got to do with anything?
Right.
I think it has everything to do with it.
No, it doesn't.
See, you're not, and I've been thinking about this as I've been going through this series here. I've been thinking about this at home and in my head. You walk around, you think about it.
He's consumed by
and
it.
A question I've been asking myself. and I'm going to ask it right now, rhetorically. Is it possible to say that I want a second wife without saying at the same time that my present wife is inadequate?
Absolutely, it's possible. It's entirely possible that there's some things that your present wife can't do. Let's say she is barren. There? How about that? She can't do that. And yet, Scripture gives all the blessings that come with sons, and men are to be fruitful and multiply, or mankind is to be, right? So, are you saying that she's inadequate? No, she may bring lots of other benefits to the table, right? The point being, though, that a woman cannot meet every single possible thing in a relationship. That's why we go out and hire help sometimes. That's why households went and got servants. Manservants, maidservants, whatever the case may be. That's why you pay the kid down the street to come cut your grass, because your woman doesn't have time to do it if, that's something that she does. My point being that no human being can fulfill everything. Right? His assumption is that she can, and that's just not the case. In fact, in my house, where we have some shared duties, it's wonderful because we all have more free time to spend together. We have more time to do fun things, to go places. We have more time to be able to do ministry stuff because it's easier to get the chores knocked out. But also, everybody in the team or in the family, everybody under my headship brings different skill sets to the table, which further diversify our abilities to reach out and do things. That's part of why a man with polygyny can build a wealth and power block. That's how Jacob could build a family that in one generation was 70 souls. Yeah, but, he doesn't want to admit to this.
Is it possible to do that? I'll ask the question again. Is it possible to say that I need or want a second wife without at the same time saying that my present wife is inadequate?
Absolutely, it's possible.
I don't think it can be done. I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't think you can do it.
It's absolutely
Tells
possible.
me something. Eve was adequate. One wife was adequate. That's all he needed.
She was more than Adam could handle. That's why we deal with sin today. So, yeah, that was all he needed at that point. No question.
And that's exactly what Adam said. He was so excited when he saw Eve. This is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Calls her name Eve. He's so excited to see her. Perhaps Adam should have been saying, wow, pretty cool. We're off to a good start here. Aren't there more where she came from? I guess if he was a good polygamist, that's what he would have been thinking.
The mocking tone and the constant mocking, it deserves to be mocked. Just this whole idea. We don't have a scripture. He hasn't produced a scripture, so instead he has to go with all these absurd arguments. And one of the things to consider here is simply that God gave Adam the starter pack. Most every man that has more than one wife that I know of, and I know multiples, started with one woman and handled it well and was a good husband, and as a result is able to take care of more than one woman. And it's not because one was inadequate. Sometimes it's because that woman needs something. She needs a covering. She needs a man. She needs a place of protection. She needs, whatever.
No, he had all he needed there in the garden. The original purpose, one man, one woman. And if you really want to know, one of the things polygamists will say, well, you can populate the earth better if you have more wives. Now that's nonsense, because if you get all the wives, if you have a nice harem of 300 wives, then there's 299 other guys that don't have a wife.
All right.
And I don't really know how that works.
That's
we might get
blatantly
to see
false.
that play out in China.
So, all right. Well, let's finish the China rant here, and then
We just might get to see that. I fear for the future of that nation. With your one-child policy, I don't know if they thought it through or not. If you have a one-child policy, your population will be cut in half in one generation. I don't know if anybody thought about that. I don't know. I truly don't know if they figured that out.
that's just a dumb rant right there. To start with, he's talking about being fruitful and multiplying, and then he says, "I don't know if they thought about that." Well, duh. If they were marrying, right, instead of killing their girls, there wouldn't be a problem now, would there? Here's the problem. In our country, there's no marrying. Very little marrying going on. I want to show you another clip right quick. I'm going to pause this right here. All right, here's a fantastic clip someone sent me the other day that is well worth listening to. Let's pay close attention to this right here as we hear the statistics this man spouts. And I haven't checked his numbers here. I've seen other similar statistics, and I've done some of my own research and study into this. But he's going to tell us that there is no shortage of women. In fact, there's a shortage of men in this country, and maybe that's what the Chinese are doing. They're going to come take all of your women. Okay, but let's go back to this.
This polygamy is a solution to your problem. You see, sir, you have a problem. You have in your country 7.8 million more women than men. If every man in America got married, there will be still 7.8 million women who will not be able to get husbands.
Boom.
And we know every man will never marry. Man gets cold feet for so many reasons. You know that? There are 25 million sodomites. You call them gays. Another 25 million women can't get husbands. Then your prison population, 98% are males. Your prison population, 98% are males. I said, your problem is getting compounded. You laugh at us. I said, the laugh is on you. The laugh is on you. Marry women of your choice by 2s and 3s and 4s. But if you cannot do justice between them, marry only one.
Great clip right there that exactly explains the situation. Exactly explains the imbalance in this country right now as a result of just the way life is going on. There's an imbalance. There are more women than men. Scripture gives a solution. Joel Saint cannot. Christendom does not. What they do is they would rather have these single women go marry a non-believer. They would rather have these single women leave the church. They would rather have these single women die alone as cat ladies than to actually read Scripture and see that God gives a solution. And that is wickedness. It is the most unloving thing that they can possibly do for single women. And they think it's righteousness. Forbidding to marry, they think it's righteousness. It's wickedness. Do the research. This clip right here will absolutely tells you a whole lot. Millions of single women without husbands. The solution is polygyny.
But then, when you're killing off the girls through abortion, which they did because of a one-child policy, we read that they would find out if it's a boy or a girl before the child's born. And if the child was a girl, they'd kill the girl, and try again. They did these kinds of things. So they're cutting down on their population even more one-to-one because it's the women who have babies.
And this is a really good point. The women have babies. Oh, wow. What that means is one man with multiple women can bring up multiple babies in a year. Wow. Don't have to wait 9 months. Okay? Or it's 9 months per woman, but you can have multiple women. This is why God allows man to have multiple wives, but does not allow woman to have multiple husbands. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10 clearly demonstrates this. I don't know how he can't put the logic together.
That's like a revelation nowadays, isn't it? Like, we're old school. We believe the women have babies around here.
Yeah, but if the women are single, how are they going to have babies? How are they going to have babies? it? What's the biblical solution to single women? Marriage. That's what it is. Getting covered. What's the biblical solution to imbalance in that? A man can take more than one. Wow! God is much smarter than you are, Joel Saint.
Dinosaurs that we are. Yeah. God told Adam to populate the earth, and he started out with one wife. So enough of this nonsense about how we're told to populate the earth, so let's get all kinds of wives around here. Stop it. That's not the way God set it up.
No, God designed a man to have a woman. He never limited a man to only one woman. He started Adam with the basic starter pack, one wife. Learn how to handle one before you have more than one. I'm telling you what. Wow. I don't even understand how his brain works.
He could have set it up differently. He did not.
He did set it up differently. He absolutely did. That's why we have regulations that say if you take more than one wife, Exodus 21:10, you have to make sure that the first gets food, clothing, and conjugal rights. She has rights. If you have more than one wife, the son of the true firstborn, whether she's of the loved or favored wife or not, is to be the one who receives the firstborn inheritance. We see that... Let's see, there are other commands that specifically demonstrate how to righteously live this out, right? Don't take too many. Don't amass too many if you're a king, right? But those are regulations. It's how to do it righteously. And then we have examples of how to do it righteously and examples of men who maybe played favorites in some things. There's no command against playing favoritism. However, we could probably draw some wisdom not to do that. That would be a good thing. But again, there's no commandment. Joel has yet to produce a commandment. Nothing.
And as an aside, I won't dwell on this very long, but these polygamists, what we really need is some honesty from at least some of them.
This is fun.
Perhaps not all. We need some honesty here. And what am I talking about? Well, at least one case I'm aware of, I was being told about the wonders of polygamy. Companionship for the wife and help around the house.
And those are true.
And all this kind of stuff. And the wife asked the husband, what's in it for you?
Let's pause right here because he's going to get snarky and he's going to do some gaslighting and play the emotional game because he doesn't have an argument, right? If he had an argument, he could just say, go to 2 Opinions chapter 2, verse 3, 2 Opinions 3:16, and it says, thou shalt not have more than one wife, right? And then we would know. It'd be easy. But since he does deal out of the book of 2 Opinions, and even in that book, he can't come up with a command, only gaslighting an opinion, so it is. But he's going to go there at this point without actually, honestly stopping to think that there are things. What's in it for the man? Okay? You know what's in it for the man? I can tell you from firsthand experience. Firsthand experience. More work. More management of relationship. More joy. More love. And he's going to say, oh, sex. Well, yeah, there's probably a little bit more of that. I'm not complaining. He may be complaining. But, there was no shortage of that before. So that's kind of cool. So let's hear the rest of this because he's gonna try to call out the polygamists, and I've got an answer for him.
Come on, man. We know what's in it for us, and what I see again and again is these polygamists will say everything else, but they will not say the one thing that they're really all about. And they'll sound all sanctimonious and, help around the house and, fill the earth with people and companionship. My wife needs companionship. Yeah, your wife needs companionship. Yeah, with you as a husband, I get why she needs companionship. Because you're not giving it to her.
Ad hominem.
Come on. Come on, polygamists. Tell us what you really think. But you don't want to. You're scared of it.
Nope.
Come out and say it. Say it into the mic. We know what it's about. It's about sex, but you won't say it. I'm challenging you to say it, but you won't.
All right, so let's talk about this for just a second there. Mr. Saint, I'm just curious, but I'm probably thinking that you and most of the men in your congregation who have one wife were definitely motivated into marriage by sex. Because God gave women fun things like, boobies. And, we could use other semi-crass language here. But the bottom line is he gave them curves and he made them look good for a reason. And if you think that a man gets married to a second just for sex, I would challenge you, why did you get married in the first place? You probably, right along with all the rest of the men in your congregation and everyone you're talking to, and you're the one being so sanctimonious, right? You did it too. So don't even go there, okay? But if you want to go there, yeah, life is good. I'm a happy man. I am well taken care of. Have no complaints. But you know what? At least, well, I'll say both of my ladies, but the fact that that my second wife was single and living a righteous, celibate life. Was not getting hugs, kisses, love. She wasn't. She didn't have a protector. She didn't have a family. She grew up as an only child. Now she's got a family. We're praying for a son. That would be my hope. But you know what? Even if not, if she never has a child, because I did marry her at a later stage in her life. Even if she never has a child, she's part of a family that has 4 sons and grands on the way. And you know what? She gets to enjoy the beauty of all of that as a loved woman in a protected place. Does she get some sex? Absolutely. And I'm happy to give it to her because that's part of what she deserves according to Exodus chapter 21, verse 10. Now, if she were in your congregation, she wouldn't get love. She wouldn't get hugs. She wouldn't get kisses. She would be able to watch everybody else's children on Sunday when she came. And she would live with the constant grief that she's single and doesn't have options. Or very, very, very few godly options. But you would deny her that so that you can have this sanctimonious position that you have that is not biblical. You, sir, are the wicked one. You add to the commandments of God. You take away from the commandments of God. You forbid marriage. You don't mind leaving women destitute and single and in the gutter and unloved, instead of picking them up and saying, nope, there's a solution in Scripture for you, and that solution is polygyny. Not an easy one, but it's a righteous one. So, yeah, life is good. I wonder how often you are taken care of. Just curious. And that is the end of that segment. We will be coming back to more, but wow, I'll tell you what, just here he is. We're hours into this rebuttal on a sermon that was just a pile of garbage. And we still have zero, not a single verse. He hasn't come up with a single commandment. I've searched the entire scriptures. You know what? It's not there. So what he's going to do is he's going to try to gaslight you. He's going to try to make you sound ignorant. He's going to try to make you sound like you want other things or like you're wicked in your heart. But God doesn't do it. In fact, this is one of the ways that the Most High takes care of women. Polygyny. Polygyny is a solution for women. War brides, as an example. When Israel went in and destroyed or brought judgment against some of God's enemies and killed the men and killed the boys, destroyed the seed, they were allowed to take, in many cases, not every case, but in many cases, they were allowed to take the women. particularly the virgin women. We see that in Numbers chapter 25 or 30, right along in there with Midian as one example. And they had 32,000 virgin women. You see in Judges chapter 6, verse 30, are they not dividing the spoil, talking about returning with the booty of winning a war? And the expectation here is a maiden, 2 maidens for every warrior. A lot of the warriors were already married. Why would they be bringing home a maiden or 2 maidens? Really? Interesting. So the expectation was war brides. Why? Because you then plant the seed and raise the next generation. Instead of just killing all of the women, the merciful thing was to take them and use the wombs to grow the nation. They got to live and be part of the people of Yah. Now, Joel and the church position in general on monogamy only, it's a wicked lie that comes straight from the pit of hell, and it's actually promulgated by Asherah. This is Asherah worship. This is about bringing equality to women, or parity, so that then they can take authority over man. It happened in Gan Eden. It's been going on all through Israel with Asherah, and it continues even today. It's the root and the heart of feminism, and the church is dripping with it. So, wow, more good stuff. I pray that this has blessed you, and we will continue with part 5. We'll follow up with that one next. So, good stuff. Love you guys. For King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.